So we all know that people are curious beings, but the children are especially curious when what they're curious about is considered taboo. And in my family growing up, there was nothing more taboo than the topic of sex. Sex with self, sex with others, implied sex on movies, on TV. Even pregnancy was a mystery to be figured out in my family. So what do children do when they don't get the answers they seek? What do? They make shit up. They create alternate realities, parallel universes to help make sense out of the things that don't make sense to them. And that's exactly what I did, because my mother would walk around saying things like, Mary, so-and-so was blessed with a child. Okay? What does an 8-year-old brain think that means? Right? I'll tell you what it meant. It meant that two people to be blessed had to lie naked in bed with a sheet to hear. Sometimes the hearer, right, the man's nipples could show. They had to close their eyes and wish for a baby. That's it. And then God would come down and do one of these and grant the request. I believed that until 5th grade. 5th grade. So then one day after school, walking home with Franny Busalaki, Sue Przewski, and Sheila Larritzson, all true names, they called me out and they said, Hoefler, you're an idiot. You're an idiot, Mary. That's not how people get pregnant. I was shocked. Went home, instead of asking my parents, because nobody talks about anything in my family, I went to the World Book Encyclopedia, because that is what we did in the 70s. World Book. And Franny, Sue, and Sheila were right. My world was turned upside down, and so my lessons about sex began, right? Not long after that faithful walk home, I put a note under my mother's pillow. The note just said, Hi, Mom, can you tell me about sex? And I signed it your daughter. Like, who else was it going to be? So I folded the note, and I placed it on top of her nightgown. It was one of those ones from the Kohl's with the embroidery right below the knee. And she wore a hat, because everybody got perms in the 70s, even people with curly hair. So my mother comes in, she's mortified, and you need to know this about my mom. She was just over 5 feet tall, born and raised in Hungary, immigrated after the war. Nobody ever told her about sex, except maybe it was her duty. She never had sex with anyone beside my father, and there she was sitting on my bed. I was so eager. She was mortified, right? Silence, awkwardness, all of it. I waited, and finally she said, do you want to know about the period? I was like, sure. I knew about the period. So there was my poor mother, red, looked straight ahead. I'm wagging like a dog. She gave me the 5-minute spiel on the period. I said, thank you, Mom, and she left. That was my sex talk with my mother. So the bottom line is it was not helpful at all. Zero helpfulness. So one has to snoop to find information, don't they? Because children that are still curious snoop. And when I started babysitting, score, right? The Joy of Sex, that white book, the Kama Sutra, the Summer of 42, and my favorite book, Xavier Hollander's memoir called The Happy Hooker. I know some of you know that book. By the way, you can still get it on Amazon with Prime delivery, just saying. Those books kept me busy for years, and I had a tremendous imagination. And it wasn't until the 9th grade that I came upon another surprise. We were tasked with making a collage. I don't know what high schoolers are supposed to learn about making collages, but there I was, pulling out the Good Housekeeping, the National Geographic. And in between my brother, I had an older brother, you know what's coming. He had tucked in one of his men's magazines, right? Club. Similar raunch to Hustler. Those, I know some of you don't like, you know what that magazine was. So I opened up the magazine, right? And cascaded out was this woman. I had never seen a creature like this ever. I was like, who's this? All the women in my neighborhood and my family looked like a version of this. Not that. Not that at all. But I was curious, right? I'm in 9th grade. Look at this. So I folded her up. You know, she had the kitten heels, the feathers, the whole thing. I folded it up. I put it away. No one was the wiser but me. But the aha moment came. I was 20 years old, a junior in college. I finally went to therapy, and Madeline Branwen, within one session, saw all of my fucked upness. She said, Mary, I need you to get a book. It was Lonnie Barbach's book called For Yourself, The Fulfillment of Female Sexuality. I got the book. I read every chapter. I took notes in the margins. And I did every single suggested exercise over and over and over and over and fucking over. I became obsessed. So when I had my daughter, I knew I was never going to let her miss out. So when Ava was ready, and she agreed because I can be pushy, I got the new and revised edition of Lonnie's book. I took it upstairs to Ava, and as I was walking out of her room, I paused, I turned around, whispered loudly, I said, Ava, remember, do all the exercises.